Cal Perry, what have you been able to gather?
One of the things that we heard an hour ago, and we decided that it wasn't worth passing on because we hadn't independently confirmed it, and we still have not, is that WDSU, our affiliate down in Louisiana, reported that a group of men from Missouri were in a nearby workout facility, some kind of a gymnasium. And this they were sourcing through the mayor's office. And they said that this group of men, quite possibly, had lured the police to this area, and that's when this ambush took place. Now, that would seem to coincide with what our Pete Williams is reporting out of Washington, D.C. And as we continue to put this together, I want to stress in the very early hours of this, we are sometimes dealing with imperfect information, and this may be one of those cases. But what it does tell us is that officials in Baton Rouge were clearly on some kind of lookout for people not just out of state, but from Missouri. And as we continue to track who this shooter was, they will, of course, be focusing on who he was there with and who he may have traveled to Louisiana with, Brian.
And again, that would include the use of plural language, and that would include why they believe the one gunman in this is, in fact, dead.
Exactly. The other thing that it would sort of also indicate, and we've heard our Pete Williams talking about this sovereign citizens movement, as we sort of all grasp the idea that this could have been something organized. The sovereign citizens movement has been known in the past not just to work in groups, but has focused on police in particular. Now, they've usually done it through paperwork. They harass the federal government through massive amounts of paperwork. The belief of the sovereign citizens movement is this bizarre belief that they can abide by the laws that they decide. And they've targeted authorities in the past, again, through the use of the legal system. They've pressured them through the courts to try to challenge things from parking tickets all the way up to felonies. This would certainly be a massive escalation, which is why, at this point, not only the authorities, but we at NBC News cannot independently confirm that this shooter, again from Kansas City, out of state, as it were, to Louisiana, is connected to groups at this point.
All right, Cal Perry, thanks. We're waiting, as you see in the lower right-hand portion of your screen, what was billed as a 4:30 Eastern Time appearance has now slid 15 minutes and probably will then some by President Obama. In addition to Mark Claxton here in our studio, we have Eugene O'Donnell standing by to talk to us, law professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, former police officer himself. And Eugene, as you watched that news conference, we had a number of speakers. What did your ears pick up on?
Well, it's stark. Remember that the New York cops were not killed by a New Yorker. They were killed by somebody who came from Philly. This also raises the issue, and I think might explain why the authorities here are not giving more information. Kansas City's a relatively far distance away. Literally now you want to know every movement. It sounds like they might have some idea of who these guys were in advance, but when did they leave Kansas City? With whom did they leave Kansas City? How did they make their way down here? Literally, it's sort of like looking at a crime scene that could be many hundreds of miles or more, so depending on where they started from. So where was it they stopped? And this also raises the intriguing question, I think, of further information from people in convenience stores, motels, who might have some inkling of what these guys were up to. So now you get a further widening of the area, and assuming that one or more of these people lived in Kansas City, no doubt soon search warrants and other investigative techniques that will be used.
Also, Eugene, electronics. I mean, these days you leave such an electronic signature wherever you go. When you walk home from work, you're picked up by multiple cameras. You're on an interstate. There's now toll-paying methods that keep meticulous records of your vehicle's progress.
Absolutely. It's not necessarily the best preventative tool, but it's quite a good investigative tool. There's an awful long record, typically, not always, but typically if they drove, if they flew, you'll get some timeline of when they left and who was with who, and whether there's a larger number of people involved here. But this kind of explains them not being local, that law enforcement is scrambling to figure out where they're from and how many of them there are, and to check all that information out. And also raises, again, the possibility that there's a larger number of people that would have some insight into them as a group and what they were up to.
And Eugene, this thread that Pete Williams first raised, if it turns out to be the plot line of this story, I assume the people across this country are going to learn a lot like groups like Sovereign Citizens. That's just the Sovereign Citizens, the tip of the iceberg.
That's right. I mean, if you're around the federal courts, any court system, there are a lot of unhinged people. Some of them are under the banner of one or the other crazy, separatist group. Certainly had killings involving federal agents. Certainly people, the Bureau of Land Management used to get threatened a lot. And the irony here, of course, is that the police, when they're doing good, and they most often are doing good, they protect the poor and the powerless and the weak. So these are people that are most scary people because they don't have any respect for the government, would like to see it brought down. And sadly, there's more than a few of them. And we do have, unfortunately, people that conjure up apocalyptic scenarios and try to arm themselves and are waiting for the big day that it's all going to unravel. And again, it's up to us to make sure that never happens, that whatever disagreements we have, they're done democratically and with consensus to the greatest extent that we can do it. And again, here are the police, the actors, the givers, not the takers, the doers, not the bloggers. They go into harm's way. Ambiguous situations, any cop will tell you, every call you go on could be autopsied, you could be critiqued. More than ever, so the job is more honorable when done well than ever before, because everybody thinks they can do it better than you can, although there's not exactly a line of people to do it. And there you are. Today, even your physical safety is sometimes even less important than making sure you're not accused of wrongdoing, you're not caught in a video. But they're the nation's police are, and they do more good in an hour in the country than you'd ever believe. That's why I think you see them with intensity, because they know each other's work. Obviously, there's some screwballs in their group and all other groups. We got to get rid of those people. But they do more for racial justice and criminal justice in an hour than all the bloggers put together. Who we need them. We need their critiques. But please understand, critiquing is not acting, and acting comes with a lot of problems because you can always be exposed to criticism and make mistakes. So it'll be interesting to see how this will play out in terms of the whether this is a part of a larger group, because this is not just one group. Be advised, there are many, many different groups threatening federal law enforcement every day, threatening judges every day, threatening others every day who are trying to do the people's business here.
Policing, just one of those lines of work where the view is vastly different from inside the arena as it is from the seats. And Eugene, thank you. That brings us to Chuck Todd, our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, getting ready for this GOP convention. Chuck, that phrase, the view is different from inside the arena than it is for the paying customers in the seats, is also true about politics and the presidency. And here we have this massive backdrop of we're about to see the president briefing room, what the job often means, what the job too often entails.
Brian, let me just go through the president's schedule of the last 7 days. Meeting with law enforcement on Monday. Tuesday goes to Dallas to honor 5 slain police officers. Wednesday convenes a meeting of law enforcement and Black Lives Matter activists. Thursday does a town hall on sort of race in America. Friday, no law enforcement issues, but makes remarks after the tragedy in Nice. And then, oh, by the way, a coup in Turkey. The point is that that's 1 week of the presidency. That is the job that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are running for. And I do think that the last 5 weeks, Brian, of all of this, of what the American public has experienced and the hits on American psyche, that is, this lack of it feels as if stuff's spinning out of control, right? Whether it's domestically with the issue between African Americans and police. Now we have a right-wing militia group perhaps involved in this. Then we have the issue of ISIS, instability in the Middle East. There is just this, and that unnerving feeling that the public, who is also watching all of this and soaking it all in, that's something these candidates, that's something both these conventions in the next 2 weeks are going to have to address. They can't pretend this isn't happening. They can't, have their party in the arena while the American public is feeling this as they're trying to decide if one of these people is ready to be commander-in-chief.
And it's as you point out, it's the tempo of it, Chuck. It is something else that in a vacuum would be monumental and earth-shaking every day. And just this past weekend, from the attack in Nice and the tragedy there to tumult in Turkey that still goes on at this hour.
And that's the part of, look, and you know, that's why, look, I think voters are going to be sitting here. You can't ever overreact as president. It's sometimes you worry about underreacting, finding that spot, because on one hand you're having to be a spokesman. On one hand you want to calm people's nerves down. You got to sort of make them sort of reassure them, and at the same time you need to make some tough decisions. You know, when the Turkey situation, as we were calling, I mean, there could have come to a point of whose side, you know, it was a tough situation, and the president might have had to decide whose side do you take in that. So, and it's all coming at you all at the same time. And that's why I thought it was important to just look at the last 7 days of this president's schedule to consider who do you imagine handling these 7 days? Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, or do you want somebody else?
Well, let me turn your question back around to you. How do you think the GOP convention will reflect the scope of our world in the last 7 days?
Well, we've already heard that they do plan to do some sort of tribute to the Baton Rouge officers tomorrow. And I think in general, I think tomorrow's theme already was supposed to be security in some form. I think you're going to hear the phrase law and order a lot. You've already been hearing it from Donald Trump. So I think you will see, especially tomorrow, that theme. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's reflected in Donald Trump's acceptance speech on Thursday. You heard a little bit of where he went on Saturday, and I think that he believes that this issue of insecurity out there could, and I think people around him believe, that voters may be looking for the quote-unquote strength, the strong man, and I think he is going to try to make that pitch on himself on Thursday.
Does it feel like there's a giant preoccupation prior to the start of the GOP convention? You're there on the ground in Cleveland?
Not yet, but don't forget they hadn't started yet. All right, and there's, you know, right now it doesn't have that feel of a split screen feeling where, you know, people are wondering what is happening, what's the latest there. Not yet, but I think part of that is not everybody's here.
Absolutely. Chuck Todd in Cleveland, Ohio. Again, kind of by necessity, will be the focus of much more of the days to come than it is today. Recapping the tragedy in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Remembering that we have one officer fighting for his life. We have 3 dead, 3 wounded. That critical officer, and a suspect who has been killed by police. However, as we noted, we just saw this press briefing from all of the top law enforcement officials in Louisiana, certainly that area of Louisiana. We noted some plural language when they were assuring people there is no active shooter situation in Baton Rouge. They still, to paraphrase, talked about the people behind this.